Okay, how's that look?
You're all set.
All right. Well, I'm going to be, as Anna said, I'm going to speak on accessibility considerations at outreach events. So first, let me tell you about myself. My name's Noreen Grice, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I have a master's degree in astronomy, a master's degree in business administration. I'm an astronomy educator, an astronomy accessibility consultant, and I am founder and president of You Can Do Astronomy. So that's a lot. Now, what I want to talk about is imagine that you're going to have an outreach event. And there's some things you need to think about first. You need to think about who will be the people coming to your event. And so we look at some statistics. According to the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, 15% of the world's population has a disability. And then according to the United States Census, more than 20% of the US population has a disability. So there are millions of people with a disability, and these may be some of the people who will be coming to your outreach event. So many organizations use outreach events to reach local, new, and underserved populations. They invite scientists, educators, and other organizations to set up an outreach table. So imagine that you have been invited to set up an outreach table, and it could be at a museum, a library, historical site, outdoor setting. How are you going to set up your outreach table? First, let's take a look at some examples showing the setup and execution of typical outreach tables and activities. Here we have a picture of a table with neatly stacked rows of pamphlets and magazines. The table is unstaffed, it's just out there. The literature table is out there. Now we have examples of outreach tables with print color pictures. So 2 pictures on the slide. The picture on the left shows a 3-sided cardboard stand, kind of like a science fair project stand, where color pictures have been attached to it, also some captions. And on the right side, we have a photographic display of various astronomical objects. Both tables are unstaffed. Now we have star party or solar viewing. We have 2 pictures on this slide. The picture on the left shows a line of children waiting to look through a telescope. The telescope is located in a park, so they're standing on the grass, and one child is looking through the telescope, probably at safe solar viewing of the sun, or possibly the moon. And the picture on the right shows a telescope located on a grassy hill, and a student is looking through the telescope up at the night sky. Sometimes there'll be an observatory at your outreach site, so you may see a person, as in this picture, who has climbed up to the top of the ladder, is leaning in toward the telescope. It's a daytime view, so the person is doing safe solar viewing. Or how about an outreach table located on a rocky beach? It's possible. There are different maritime centers that have outreach events. So in this picture, the table is located amongst gravel and rocks, and 2 people are talking to a visitor. Or how about you've been invited to give a lecture? This is a picture of a lecture hall. There's a speaker pointing probably a laser pointer toward a slide. It's daylight, but the lights are also on in the room. People are sitting in folding chairs looking toward the slide. The speaker is also looking toward the slide. And then very successful outreach events are going to bring in crowds. So there's 2 pictures of different crowd scenes. One, children are gathered around different sort of activity stations. One boy is reaching out toward a piece of wood. It might be part of a rocket. And on the other picture, there's a large crowd gathered around a scientist. He looks like he's doing a demonstration. He's wearing rubber gloves. At least one big glove is visible. And there's a big crowd around him, and he's talking to the people as he's doing the experiment. So I'm thinking maybe it's a chemistry experiment or a physics experiment. Now, it's time for you to think about your to-do list. How are you going to make your outreach table or event accessible for mobility, for visual, for hearing, for communication, that it'll be sensory friendly, that there might be assistive animals, and think of some other ideas you might do. So now let's take a look. Mobility access, as we all know, the good and the bad. So good is like an accessible height adjusting table, and there's a picture of a student in a wheelchair who's comfortably seated under this table and comfortably reading a book. As opposed to the other picture, which is the inaccessible main entrance to an indoor event. There's a picture of a wheelchair facing a stairwell, and you're wondering, where is the accessible entrance? Then we talk about accessibility at an observatory. How about instead of only having viewing allowed by climbing a ladder, if you can't climb the ladder, you can't observe? How about having direct viewing at an accessible location with a portable telescope? Or how about having the image from the telescope eyepiece available at an accessible location by video, which could be like on a monitor or even on a cell phone? Well, non-visual, low visual access, you need to have accessible materials that are touchable, that people can experience in different ways. So I have two examples here. One is a tactile picture of Jupiter from my book, Touch the Stars. And on the other picture, someone is holding a 3D model of a spacecraft. So as we know, there are companies that can 3D print objects for you if you don't have a 3D printer. And if you do have a 3D printer, NASA has a website that lists a lot of files and shows you what it will look like. So you have access in different ways to make 3D models. Oh, okay, let's see, wait a minute. Yeah, there we go. Make sure I didn't skip something. Oh, I don't want to go, let me just go back. Now, going back to the idea of the telescope, how about offering a tactile tour of a telescope? The picture on the left shows a small tabletop telescope. This telescope I brought to an event myself, and we sort of passed it around. And so there's a student feeling the telescope. The telescope is probably about 15 inches long and maybe about, 4 inches wide. And so he's able to feel where the eyepiece is, where the mirror is, and actually rotate the telescope. On the picture on the right, this is a picture from a star party I helped out with in Dallas with the Dallas Astronomical Society of Texas, I think is their name. And so the amateur astronomer has his Dobsonian telescope, and a young girl is touching the eyepiece, and he is providing a tactile tour of that telescope. So they are able to participate and understand how the telescope works. Well, they also had some of my tactile pictures there. So while people were looking through the telescope, say at the moon, other students were touching pictures of the moon, so they were participating. Okay, back to the telescope again. For low visual access, instead of only offering viewing through the telescope eyepiece, how about going back again, having the image on a monitor or a cell phone? So that helps people with mobility access, that helps people with low vision access, being able to show the image from the telescope in different ways. As we've heard from several of the wonderful talks at this conference, sonification is a really interesting strategy to learn about astronomy. So you listen to data through sound. NASA has a site on their Hubble Space Telescope page that talks about explore from space to sound. And also we heard a talk about the sonification through the Chandra X-ray Observatory. I really like this particular website because it's sort of set up like an encyclopedia, and the website has many pictures and files that you can click on. Let me see if this will work. If I click on the file, if we can you still see my screen?
Yes. I can, yes.
Okay, and I'm just going to play a short clip of sonification of the galactic center because I think this is really cool. And what I really like about this site is below it, there's a selection. You can listen to the composite wavelength view, which is what I just played, or you can break it out by X-ray or infrared or optical. So you have a lot of options to learn with sonification. Now, continuing on, there we go. ASL. You can ask the people who are organizing the event, will there be a sign language interpreter? This is good to know. And also, in case you don't know, there's astronomy signs that have been developed through the International Astronomical Union. So if the interpreter is not familiar with a particular topic, I mean, usually stars is pretty easy to do, but other topics, then you can use this as sort of a Pictionary reference. We have in this conference wonderful captioners who are captioning live, but you may not have that option when you're sitting at a table at a library. But if you have access to Wi-Fi and you have an Android phone or an Android tablet, or the person coming to you who has a hearing impairment has an Android phone or an Android tablet, you can use a free app called Google Live Transcribe. So while I've been sitting here, I do have a tablet, and it actually has been transcribing everything that I've been saying. And also the speakers before me, I was watching their transcription. So I'd like to say that to consider this as an option when a professional captioner is not available and you're sort of in a situation where you really do need captioning, that Google Live Transcribe is an option. And also, it's not just for people hearing impaired. When I was working in the planetarium in Boston, we had a captioning system, and several times people who spoke English as their second language requested captioning because they told me it was easier to read than to listen to English. So that's a second way that captioning is good for people who are hearing impaired, but also people who are non-native language speakers. Sensory-friendly access options. Well, remember, successful outreach events bring crowds, and that could be too much stimulation. There could be too much noise, too much light, just too much activity going on. So you may want to ask the person who's organizing the outreach event, will there be a location that is quiet, and friendly? Could be a bench outside, and in a quiet area, it could be a room that can be quiet so people can just relax and maybe decompress a little bit. Or the other thing is, will they be able to offer early access to the event, maybe a special opening hour a little bit earlier before it opens to the public, so that people could come and who have sensory needs and come and talk to the people at the outreach table and still have that kind of experience, because you want people to be able to participate. That's really the big thing. Anticipate service and emotional support animals. We're all familiar with guide dogs, but I don't know if you've ever seen guide ponies. I have in 2 different conferences. It's quite amazing, the guide ponies. And there's dogs that help people with balance. There's dogs that help pull wheelchairs. The picture of a dog in this slide putting an ATM card in the machine. The animals should be, one thing is they should be well behaved, and they should be in control. The person should be in control with them. They are a team. You should not have a dog jumping up, barking, biting, or just acting out, because that's really not a trained support animal. So now let's look back at some of the pictures we looked at earlier, since we've been talking about some accessibility options, and take a second look at what might be changed and what might be valuable to make it more inclusive. So first of all, let's go back to the picture of the table on the beach. Thinking about putting a table on a beach on a rocky surface surrounded by various size rocks. What do you think? How would you change this? How could you make this better? You can put some ideas in the chat, and also I'll throw some ideas out there too. How about relocating the table to a flat surface that does not have rocks, so that it's easy for people to come in to the table in a wheelchair, or if somebody is using a mobility assistance device, it makes it easy. There's no need to be making it, like a marathon session to get to a table. We want to be welcoming. How about the table with the printed astronomical images? They're beautiful. The table is unattended. So, think about what could be done to make this a bit more accessible and welcoming. How about, in addition to the color images, can you have tactile images? Can you have models of the objects available? Do any of these objects connect with sonification that exists? Could there be a person standing there to pictorially describe each image? Any of these things would make it welcoming. The literature table, very common at outreach events. Well, the pages are neatly stacked, but how can we make this more accessible and welcoming? How about, could some of the materials be large print? Could they be in Braille? Could there be downloadable electronic options? Could the materials be in other languages? Returning to the picture of the student looking through the telescope, he's standing on a grassy hill. So the telescope was located on a grassy hill. How do we make this more accessible? You've probably already thought of this. Relocate the telescope off the grassy hill, so there's no tripping hazard and everybody can be stable. Also, it's better if the telescope is not on grass to begin with. But maybe there could be a tactile image of the object being viewed through the telescope. Could the image be projected onto a cell phone or monitor? And again, if you have Wi-Fi in that area and you have an Android tablet or Android cell phone, you could go on Google Live Transcribe and have captioning right there with you. And the picture of the lecture hall scene, maybe you have been called to give a lecture at a program. How could we make this situation more accessible? Well, first of all, the scene shows that it's daytime and the lights are on. So maybe turn the lights off for a little contrast so that the picture can be seen a little easier on the slide. How about have reserved seating for better access? Could the narrator describe the pictures very descriptively? Could the speaker wear a microphone and face the audience when talking? Is captioning possible, or interpretation, sign language interpretation? And the picture of the scientist with the crowd around. Everybody's definitely interested in what he's doing, but a big crowd can be a turnoff to someone with sensory issues. So how about early hour access to avoid overstimulation? Maybe there could be a special demonstration. Offer portable chairs and wheelchair parking. Could the scientist pictorially describe the demonstration and give advance warning of any flashing lights or loud sounds? Can there be captioning, sign language interpretation, tactile resources or experiences? So think of what ideas you can add to the list. What are some other things that, now you've seen these situations, that you could add to your own table and your own presentation? I have two books I think would be helpful for outreach events. One is called Touch the Stars. It's the 5th edition, recently came out, and that is available through National Braille Press. And it has tactile pictures on many astronomical topics. The other book is called Everyone's Universe. It's a print book. It's also available as a digital book. And it describes case studies on how to make astronomy accessible through many strategies, including mobility, visual, hearing, communication. And that one is available through Amazon. So I think together, if we think about some of these strategies, we can make outreach events more welcoming and accessible. You might consider these if you're attending an outreach event or you're organizing your own. But I think together we can make the universe more accessible. And with that, I think see if my last slide will come up. But basically, I thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Noreen. We really appreciate that. And I would just like to acknowledge that when I was first learning about astronomy accessibility, Noreen was the first person who I discovered. So Noreen's amazing tactile books and resources, and just the wealth of opportunities and resources she has created are actually part of the reason I myself got interested in accessibility in the very beginning. So thank you, Noreen, for making that possible and for making accessibility accessible.
Yes, yay. Are there any questions, or what? I see some numbers at the chat, so hopefully there's been some good conversation going on.
There has been, yes, and I do have a question here for you, which asks, how do you suggest we encourage inaccessible sites to become accessible?
Yeah. So inaccessible sites, it's difficult because one is, well, I think people are looking at, it's going to cost a lot of money. I think that's the first thing people think about. And if it's a historic building and, basically the front door is not accessible and you have to follow a sign around the back entrance, that's really a problem. But I think that you can show that, well, okay, since I have an MBA, from a business point of view, if the program and the facility is more accessible, more people will come. So that's always, people are always looking at, finances, but really from, just a human being point of view, being able to do small things and build a community, being able to involve local, say, National Federation of the Blind chapters or schools, visitors, gathering focus groups from local people. I think people are really interested in helping. And I think people who, organizations that lack resources but are afraid and currently inaccessible, I think they can change if they just meet the people and get involved. And I think, as I said, things like the Google Live Transcribe, this is a free app. So if an organization says, oh, we can't afford thousands of dollars, this is free. So it's some, kind of different strategies to tackle it.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we do have another comment from Rachel who says, thank you, Noreen. We have tried to use speech-to-text apps for our star parties in the past, but we have not tried Google Live Translate. How accurate have you found it to be?
Yeah, it's Google. Yeah, Google Live Transcribe. And well, you tell me, I'm holding it right up to the screen. And it is printing what I am saying. It's pretty good. I mean, sometimes there's funny things. Yesterday I was charging it and I turned it on and it was very windy and it said birds singing. So you might expect some odd things, but I would say to give this a try. And it does not work with Apple or an iPad or iPhone. It's only Android only. But I would say, Rachel, give it a try. You need Wi-Fi though.
Great, thank you so much. And I don't have any other open questions here. So if anyone else has any, you're more than welcome to add them to the chat or to the Q&A. So yeah, with that, Noreen, thank you so much for being here. It's such a pleasure as always.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. And one comment here to share. University of British Columbia in Canada has done great work on making traditionally inaccessible fieldwork accessible.